Alright, let's dive right into the fascinating world of coffee chemistry and roasting techniques. I know it sounds a bit serious, but trust me, this stuff is pretty cool. Coffee, in its simplest form, is a combination of water and coffee beans. Well, what makes it so special is the hundreds of chemical compounds found within each tiny bean. These compounds are responsible for all the flavors, aromas, and even the color of your coffee. Now, let's talk about the roasting process. You see, roasting coffee is a science as much as it is an art. But when green, unroasted coffee beans are heated, they go through a series of chemical reactions that transform their raw flavors into the complex, delicious taste we associate with coffee. This transformation is known as the Maillard reaction, which also occurs in foods like toasted bread and grilled steak. Yum! Roasting techniques can drastically change the flavor profile of the coffee. Light roasts, for example, are heated for a shorter period of time and at lower temperatures. This allows the unique flavors of the coffee's origin to shine through, resulting in brighter, more acidic cups. Medium roasts are, well, in the middle. They have a balance of flavor, aroma, and acidity. Dark roasts, on the other hand, are roasted at higher temperatures for longer periods. This leads to a fuller body and robust flavors, often with notes of chocolate or smokiness. But here's a fun fact. The longer you roast the beans, the more caffeine is lost. So, contrary to what some may believe, lighter roasts actually have more caffeine than darker ones. There's so much more to coffee than just a caffeine kick. It's a delicate balance of chemistry and art, and understanding it can truly enhance your appreciation for each cup. Now, isn't that something to contemplate over your next brew? Next, we'll be exploring the impact of water temperature on the extraction process and how it ultimately affects the taste of your coffee. So, stay tuned. Now that we've delved into the chemistry of coffee and roasting techniques, let's move on to something equally essential: the impact of water temperature on the extraction process, and ultimately, the taste of your coffee. Water temperature plays a crucial role in brewing coffee. It affects how effectively and quickly the flavors and aromas are extracted from the coffee grounds. But before we dive into the details, let's understand what extraction really means. Extraction is the process of pulling out the flavor compounds from the coffee grounds into the water. Too little extraction and your coffee will taste sour. Too much extraction and it could taste bitter. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If your water is too hot, it could over-extract the coffee, leading to a bitter and burnt taste. On the other hand, if the water is too cool, it might under-extract the coffee, resulting in a weak, sour flavor. That's definitely not what we want in a perfect cup of coffee, right? So, what's the magic number? The Specialty Coffee Association recommends a water temperature between 195 to 205 degrees Fahrenheit or 90 to 96 degrees Celsius for optimal extraction. This temperature range ensures the right balance of flavors and aromas are extracted, giving you that delightful cup of joe we all love. But remember, every coffee is different. Some coffees might taste better at slightly higher or lower temperatures. So don't be afraid to experiment a little to find your personal sweet spot. After all, part of the fun is in the journey, isn't it? So, there you have it. The next time you brew coffee, pay a little extra attention to your water temperature. It could very well be the secret to your perfect cup. Up next, we'll be talking about the significance of grind size and its influence on the strength and flavor of your coffee. Stick around. right? Moving forward, let's discuss something that might seem trivial at first, but trust me, it's a game changer. We're talking about the grind size and how it influences the strength and flavor of your brewed coffee. You see, the size of your coffee grounds directly affects the extraction process, which we've already established is crucial for a great tasting cup of coffee. The grind size affects how quickly water can pass through the coffee and how long it's in contact with the grounds. Imagine this for a second. If you're using really fine grounds, like powdered sugar, the water will take longer to pass through, right? This leads to more extraction and usually results in a stronger, more robust cup of coffee. This is why espresso, which requires a very fine grind, is so intense and flavorful. On the other hand, if you're using coarse grounds like sea salt, the water will pass through more quickly, leading to less extraction. This results in a lighter, more subtle flavor, which is why many people prefer a coarser grind for methods like French press or cold brew. But here's the tricky part. If your grind is too fine, you might over-extract the coffee and end up with a bitter taste. But if it's too coarse, you might under-extract it and get a weak and sour flavor. It's all about finding the right balance. So the next time you're brewing coffee, think about your grind size. Experiment with finer or coarser grinds and see how it changes the taste. You might just stumble upon your perfect cup. I hope this gives you a new perspective on the humble coffee grind. But hang on, we're not done yet. Next, we'll be investigating the role of brewing time in determining the taste and aroma of your coffee. Stay with me. Let's now turn our attention to another key player in the quest for the perfect cup of coffee, the brewing time. Brewing time, like water temperature and grind size, plays a crucial role in extraction. It determines how long the water has to interact with the coffee grounds, and thus how much flavor, aroma, and caffeine is extracted. If you brew your coffee for too short of a time, you're likely to under-extract it. The flavors won't fully develop, and you might end up with a coffee that's weak and lacks depth. On the other hand, if you brew for too long, you risk over-extraction, which can lead to a bitter, harsh taste. It's a bit of a Goldilocks situation, isn't it? The optimal brewing time can vary based on the method you're using. For instance, an espresso shot typically takes about 20 to 30 seconds, while a French press should steep for around 4 to 5 minutes. Pour-over methods, like the Chemex or V60, usually take between 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the volume of coffee. But remember, these are just guidelines. There's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to brewing time. It's important to taste your coffee and adjust the brewing time based on your personal preference. So, the next time you're brewing a cup, take a moment to consider your timing. A few seconds can make a world of difference. We're nearing the end of our coffee science journey, but we've still got one important topic left to cover, the coffee to water ratio. Stick around, it's going to be a good one. All right, folks, we're at the final stretch of our journey. Let's now talk about the coffee to water ratio and why it's so crucial in achieving that perfect cup of coffee. The coffee to water ratio is basically how much coffee you use relative to the amount of water. It's a significant factor that determines the strength and flavor of your coffee. Too much coffee and not enough water, and you might get a brew that's too strong or even bitter. On the contrary, too little coffee and too much water, and you could end up with a weak, watery brew. Now, the golden ratio that's often recommended is 115 or 118. This means for every gram of coffee, you use 15 to 18 grams of water. But again, this is just a starting point.
Yes, you guessed it. Coffee is a lot about personal preference, and it's okay to deviate from this ratio to find what suits your taste best.
Another point to remember is that different brewing methods might require different ratios. For instance, a French press might do well with a 1:12 ratio, while pour-over methods might benefit from a 1:17 ratio. It's all about experimenting and finding what works for you. In conclusion, the coffee-to-water ratio is an essential yet often overlooked aspect of brewing coffee. By understanding its importance and learning to adjust it, you can greatly enhance your coffee experience and an inch closer towards that elusive perfect cup. That's all for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the science behind the perfect cup of coffee. Remember, the best coffee is the one that tastes best to you. So don't be afraid to experiment and tweak these variables to suit your taste. Happy brewing!